Hello, Math 8. Welcome back. This is Mrs. Coates, and today we are going to jump into something brand new. We're going to look at something called rotations. You're going to need a piece of graph paper, and we're going to go ahead and start off with this review of solving systems of equations. So, I want you to go ahead and grab a piece of paper, pause the video, and try and solve this system. After solving that system and finding out that our answer is definitely not a solution, our answer is going to be no solution, let's look at our opportunity to learn, our learner right and responsibility, and our actions to take. As you can see, we are going to work on rotating shapes on a coordinate grid. We're going to make sure we take action on all of our feedback, and then we're going to make sure we follow the steps, correct mistakes, and reflect on that feedback. Let's jump in. Okay, so on your paper, I want you to draw a 10 by negative 10 graph. Notice that I have one here that is 10 by negative 10 and 10 by negative 10 on each of my axes. I want you to go ahead and do that really quick. Pause the video. Make sure that we label our axes. Remember that this is our positive x and this is our positive y. And then this is our negative x and our negative y. It's important to know where our positives and negatives are on our graph. Okay, so we're going to draw these shapes. I was really nice and I already gave you the points of our original shapes. So go ahead and make sure you put those points on there, label them. Notice I have them labeled. So this point over here is labeled with an R. This one's an O. There's a T. Here's all of my labels. These are our original labels. Make sure you have our original labels on that. Once you have those shapes drawn on there, we're going to try and think about how we might rotate these 90 degrees. And typically when we're talking about graphs, we are going to look at quadrant 1, and then quadrant 2, and then quadrant 3, and then quadrant 4, right? We've talked about all of these before. And this makes a C shape, right? Well, that's not how a clock works, right? So when we think about how a clock actually works, what direction does our clock rotate? Does our clock rotate left or does our clock rotate right? So instead of rotating this direction, because we're going to call that counterclockwise, we're going to make sure that we rotate clockwise. Okay, so clockwise is the same numbers, same direction that you would see counting numbers on a clock, okay? So make sure you remember that. So this would be our 12 o'clock, and this would be our 3 o'clock, and then this would be 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Okay, so how do we rotate a shape 90 degrees? How are we going to do that? Well, in order to do that, we have to know what rotate means. Well, rotate is one of the easy things that we can do to remember this is just, it's turning. We're taking this shape and we're turning it around our origin. Remember our origin is right there in the center? Yep. We're going to rotate all of these shapes around so that all of our points are going to go in a circle. Okay? And that means at the end, if we rotated it all the way around a circle, which is 360 degrees, we would come back to these original shapes. So, how do we do that? How do we look at rotating these shapes? Well, we're saying to rotate it 90 degrees. Well, let's think about what 90 degrees is. What is a 90-degree triangle? A 90-degree triangle is a right triangle, right? It has that perfect corner. It's the edge of a piece of paper. Well, we have lots of corners, don't we? Each and every one of these is 90 degrees. So we're going to take each of these corners, each of these points, and we're going to rotate 90 degrees. That's 90 degrees. That's 90 degrees. Over here, another 90 degrees. Over there, a 90 degrees. So if we're going to rotate 90 degrees, we have to take this point right here, and it has to somehow end up over here, right? It has to end up in a whole new section. And we're going to take this point right here, and it's going to come over this way somewhere. And then our T is also going to rotate into a new quadrant. It's going to be in quadrant 4 also. So how do we do that? So the easiest way to know where these points need to be is to take your 2 points. You have a -1 and you have a 1 and a -2. We're going to flip those numbers. So we're going to put our -2 in the X spot, and we're going to put our 1 in the Y spot, but we need to have -Y now. So we're going to flip our numbers and make our Y times -1. So what would that be for the rest of these if you flip the numbers and make the Y negative? Go ahead and try and solve just these, just the math part for the O through E. Okay, try and figure those out really quick, and then we can graph what this shape looks like. So these should be the answers you got. So let's try and plot these points. Let me make some room on our graph. And I'm going to do these in a different color so that we can see that it is going to be a different color. Okay, so our first one, we have -2, -1. That means I have to go over -1, -2, and then I have to go down -1. That's my first point. And what should we call that? What was the original point called? Well, the original point is R. What do we call it when we transform or translate or shift a point? What do we call that next point? If you said the prime, you would be right. So we're going to label this. This is going to be our R prime. Okay, so now let's do O. We have 4 and -3. So we have to count over +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then down -3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to put a point right there. Well, that stands for our O. So we know that's going to be our O prime. Okay, now let's do the T. We're going to go +1 and then -5. So +1 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, that's going to be our prime point. So T prime. And now we just connect those points. So same shape, we've just rotated it. So now let's try doing our A, T, and E. Go ahead and graph those really quick and see how you do. So here's our answer for these. So we need to make sure that we keep our primes labeled and make sure that you're using the same case when it comes to the letters, right? Because we have a T and we have a T. Well, we need to make sure we know which T is which T. So we have a capital T and a lowercase t. Okay. So how did you do? Did you make a mistake? With a different colored pen, if you need to pause and go grab one, go ahead. Go and now correct your mistakes. Don't erase. Use something else, different colored pen or pencil, and draw in the correct points. How did you do? Tell yourself how you did. On your paper, write where your mistakes were and how you could fix them next time. So here we're seeing the same exact shapes in the same exact points. But this says we have to rotate 180 degrees. So we're going to use our same graph. You don't have to draw another graph. But now instead of rotating 90 degrees, we're going to take those original shapes and we're going to rotate them 180 degrees. And I know that sounds like a lot. That sounds like it's going to be really, really tricky, right? Now, I want you to think about this. If this is 90 degrees right here, and then we rotated this 90 degrees to get our shapes down here. If we go one more 90, what is 90 plus 90? 90 plus 90. That's 180. So now, instead of moving our shapes one quadrant, we're going to go clockwise 2 quadrants. So our shapes are going to end up over here with a little bit up here. Okay, so let's go ahead and try and graph these. How do you think you're going to get those shapes over there? I want you to take just a second and try getting your shapes to that 180 degree rotation. So we already know our points for 90 degrees. Now we need to do our points for 180 degrees. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 2 different ways that you can do this. Because you already have your 90 degrees, you can use the exact same method with those new points. Flip your points and make sure you multiply the y by negative. So we had for our point was -2, -1 for r prime, right? Well, if we have -2, -1 for 90 degrees, how do we get to 90 more? Because 90 plus 90 is 180. So how do we do that 90 more? You can flip and make that number negative again. So then our point would be -1. And then -2 times a negative is a positive. So now we have -1, 2. So now our point is just going to go over 1 and up 2, and our point is right there. And that again is just going to be called r prime because we're rotating at 90 degrees. Or 180 degrees, I apologize. So let's try, go ahead and try doing 1 or 2 shapes that way. Or 1 or 2 points that way. The other way we can do it, though, is we can keep our numbers exactly the way that they currently are. Exactly the way they currently are. And then we can take those numbers, and we're just going to multiply both the x and the y by -1. So let's look at that. -1, +2. -3, -4. Go ahead and try that. Make sure you do all 6 points and give it a shot. Here's what your answer should be. If you didn't get this answer, that's totally fine. Go ahead and take that other colored pencil or pen and make those corrections. Again, don't erase anything. You want to see where your mistakes were. And then tell yourself, this is where I went wrong. This is how I need to fix it. And explain those steps to yourself so that next time you'll do even better. So now we're going to do 270 degrees. 270 degrees. So we've got a 90, and a 90 makes 180, and 180 plus 90 is 270. So I want you to go ahead and give this one a shot by yourself. I'm not going to tell you any hints or anything. Go ahead and try it yourself, and then we'll talk about it. So here's what your final solution should look like. So you've done all of these on the same graph. Go ahead and make your changes that if you got anything wrong, how can you make it so you don't get them wrong again next time? If you got them all right, I want you to explain to me how you knew what the answer was. All right, and here's what the finished graph looks like with all of our rotations. How did you feel? As we progress through each step today, how did your understanding of rotations change? I want you to answer those questions, be as detailed as you can, and have a wonderful day. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.